our game will be showcased and playable to the public.
Now, before we get into the game, we want to briefly introduce ourselves. So, I'm Julia Rossiter. I was the art director and project manager of this team.
I'm Nick Korzen. I'm the COO and sound engineer.
And I'm Kunal Sheth, and I'm the CTO.
Now, we'd like to tell you a little bit about Pigmentation Confrontation. The game is a two-player tower attack and defend game. It's a friendly competition between two buildings filled with artists, and their goal is to compete to cover the other opponent's building with all of their chosen color paint. You'll notice that there's a gray cityscape just beyond the horizon, kind of a reminder that at the end of the day, our game is just a bunch of artists trying to bring more color back into their urban environment. So, you know, we could sit here and tell you all about the gameplay, but I think instead we'd rather just jump right into the demo. And so, Kunal and Nick, are you ready to begin your Pigmentation Confrontation?
Sure. So first we're going to start with the tutorial. In the beginning, you're going to choose your color, which is going to affect the color of your tower and the color paint that you're going to be throwing at your opponent. And so once you start building your tower, you can choose among different attack weapons to put on the first two floors. It's going to affect the coverage that the paint does to your opponent's tower and the spread of the paint when you're firing it across the screen. In the bottom floor, you're going to select a defensive weapon, which allows you to either take reduced damage for a shorter period of time, or reduce damage for a longer period of time, or take no damage for a shorter period of time.
When both players are ready, the game begins. Players can drag back on any floor, and upon release, the shots will be fired. Players can tap on any of the defense units when they're not cooling down to activate the defense. Also, you need to keep an eye out for the falling paint buckets. These paint buckets will help you to replenish the ammo. And also after regular intervals, there will be rain showers. These rain showers will wash off the paints of the floor, giving the players a chance to fight back.
Like I said before, one player wins when one tower is completely filled with the other player's paint. So this is the choose your color screen Kunal and Nick are going to demonstrate. This is obviously where players get to choose their individual color that will follow them throughout the game, giving them a sense of visual identity, which is pretty fun. And now this is the setup screen. So, as you can see, there's different paint mediums for players to choose from. Each one has a different statistic set to it, as you can see up in the top left and right corners. So, for example, oil will have less coverage more coverage, but less spread. So it's just, you know, big balls of oil, dense oil paint being shot. And the drag and drop system that is implemented in this screen is pretty important because it gives players that responsiveness that's really important. So I will swap out with Kunal now, and he's going to tell you about kind of more of the action in the game.
Each color the player chooses has a direct impact on the projectiles and the tower. As you can see, players can drag back on any floor to shoot the projectiles. And also when they tap on a defense, when it's not cooling down, will activate the defense. And occasionally you will see the paint buckets falling. These paint buckets will set your ammo back to 15. So you only have 15 ammo per floor. And after regular intervals, there will be rain showers. So as you can see, these rain showers work to bring the color back, to the towers. And I will now swap with Nick, and he will talk more about the music.
So I'm not sure if you noticed, but in the beginning of the game, the music was a lot more cheerful, and now it's a little more intense and giving the players a greater sense of urgency because the game is coming to a close. This is because the music is layered, so as the towers take more and more damage, the music is going to slowly transition into something more intense and to give the players that sense of urgency.
Oh, too intense.
So the sound effects I'll mention later on in the presentation, but I created them through something called Foley effects. So for example, the collision of the paint was a combination of me shaking a water bottle into a microphone to get sort of a paint splash effect. And for a sort of collision effect on the tower, I combined a recording me pounding my chest, and I wanted something that would also sound like you were colliding with bricks or maybe concrete, so I took a coffee mug, flipped it upside down, and tapped on it with my knuckles. And so I combined all those sound effects, and that's what's going on when the paint collides with the O tower. I also use this program called Audacity, so I could change the pitches of the sounds. So once a player wins, their colored paint fills the screen, and they're greeted with a congratulatory track, and of course the paint kind of splotching everywhere. And now that we've showed you around the Pigmentation, Confrontation, we're going to talk a little bit more about the development.
So, Pigmentation Confrontation was made in a total of about 3 months, start of the semester, and as everything begins with, we started with an idea. So we were given the theme color to work with, which it brought us to the idea of paint, and then between all of our interests, we wanted to have kind of a strategic game, and then so merging those ideas together, we came up with having different paint mediums as different weapons with different abilities. This was our initial storyboard. As you can see, it does kind of hold up to our final product that we have today, and we're happy to say that a lot of the ideas that we did have in the beginning, plus some more later on, were added to the final product.
This is the prototype we started with, and as you can see, we've come a long way from that, but we have always tried to maintain the basic essence of our game, which was to have 2 towers and some certain number of floors to start with. And from the start, we always wanted to implement the drag and drop feature to give the players the freedom to choose their own weapons, and also the projectile feature, which also lets the player shoot and aim on the floors.
So I'd like to show you kind of the beginning of the art for the game. We knew initially that we wanted to work with pixel art, so these are some of the first unit ideas that we had, in addition to some of the first unit stats screens that we had. And then, so we came up with this, and later on, about midway through making the game, we ended up switching towards more of a drawn style, which was definitely helpful in terms of laying everything out and getting, keeping us moving towards getting the functionality worked out. But as you saw, we did end up going back to pixel art.
So as I mentioned earlier, most of the sound effects were created by something called Foley art, which basically consisted of me just banging anything I could find in my room together to make something that sounded like it could be usable. So the first sound effects I actually created were for the drag and drop back in that early prototype, and I just recorded myself making a popping noise with my mouth and changed the pitch to that to give the players something really concrete once they selected what they wanted and dropped it, so it felt really, really good. The ready up is one of the sounds that I didn't actually record, so I generated a sine wave in Audacity just to have something that was pretty clear. And I already mentioned the shooting sound effects, and I think one of my favorite sound effects that I recorded was for the falling paint bucket, which I wanted like a little creaky metal, so I found a pet carrier and just kind of slowly opened and closed it.
For shooting, we use the Unity Lean Touch library, and also we wanted players not to shoot continuously at each other, so we implemented an ammo system that will only let them shoot for a certain number of projectiles at a time. And one cool thing about our shooting algorithm is that we actually use the real-world physics formulas. What actually happens to an object when it is thrown is the same formula that we use to shoot each projectile.
And at this point, we started implementing unique units and kind of brainstorming what that would mean. As I mentioned before, we knew that we wanted to have different paint mediums do different things. So we ended up narrowing that down to having unique spreads, unique sizes for the projectiles, as well as unique visuals, obviously, which is important. So you can kind of differentiate between what's flying through the air as it's all happening. And then also we had the defense units, which were different enough, but easily identifiable as a defense unit.
So all the music I wrote in Sibelius and then exported into GarageBand just for more clean sounds. The first thing that I wrote was the menu music, which actually came to me by accident. I was just playing around with some sounds that I liked, and I found what I thought was an interesting and happy melody that sort of reflected the good nature of our game. And then I started on a bunch of tracks that we were going to put into the gameplay. This is before we decided we wanted to layer it. So when we did end up layering the music, I just cut it up into several pieces, and that was in what you heard when you were playing the game. The end game music, we wanted something that was a little congratulatory, so I wrote this little brass fanfare, and that's what you heard at the very end of the game.
And color selection came a little later on as well. This is pretty important to the customization aspect of our game. The player choice that they make in the beginning as to what color they want to be shooting will also follow them into the color of their tower, the color of their paint, the color of the different paint that the units are holding. So like I said before, it's just kind of a fun way to give players that sense of identity throughout the entire gameplay.
We also wanted some external factors. That the players cannot control in the game. So that's why we added the rain and the falling buckets. So the rain and the falling buckets are some of the factors that players cannot control. And
yeah, so towards the end, we had to kind of rework the art again because we had added a lot of new stuff. At this point, we ended up going again towards having a full pixel art style. So it was important to kind of update all of the aspects of the game to this now. And then additionally, we added some environmental animations. So the clouds that you saw kind of floating in the background, you might have saw a bird once in a while go by. That really added a lot of life to the game. In addition, there was also some animations added to the units. So you'll see they have one idle animation where they're just kind of bobbing as they're in the floor. And then when you shoot, they kind of like squint like they're, really trying to give it their all.
So the sound mixing and layering took a lot of tweaking. Initially, after people were playing our game, they thought it was either too cheerful, and then some people thought it was too intense. So that's where we decided to sort of have this slow transition from a happy, cheerful in the beginning, and as the game goes on, it progressively gives you that sense of urgency. The volume was also a bit of an issue. A lot of the sound effects were louder than others, so that took some tweaking. But once we got the layering and mixing, it became much more easy for us to implement those changes.
And kind of the cherry on the top was the user interface. So that's things like the company logo, the game logo, the design of the buttons, the menu screens, also the location of the stats for each unit, just so it was easy and kind of seamless for players to understand what was going on and where to click next. The tutorial as well is an example of that. So just here is what you saw before. We just show off the credits screen. So that's in the game if you want to look at that. So yeah, this is kind of a full outline of everything that we did in the past 3 months. And so with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone one last time for spending this brief portion of your afternoon with us. And after we have some volunteers come up to play, we'll open the floor to some questions, suggestions, anything else. So are there 2 or more people who would like to try out Pigmentation Confrontation?
Why not? I'll go play.
Make sure the screen's only detecting your one finger. That's okay. Solid choices.
Top buckets.
Green's doing pretty well. No offense, right?
You gotta think of words.
Congratulations, Larry. Does another pair want to come up, or should we just open the floor for questions?
We can take questions.
Okay. Questions? Concerns? Comments? Thoughts? Something we got breakfast this morning. Yes.
You had like another month on me. What do you think you would do more to it?
That's a great question. Personally, I think I would say more to the rain and environmental effects happening. We kind of talked about having a different way to affect the rain, or maybe having a defense unit, a new one that was just particular to the rain. Just more ways to kind of add complex advantages and disadvantages to both players. I don't know about you two.
I agree. I think I would primarily add a larger variety of attacking and defensive weapons.
I'd go with that.
Yes.
So you can't keep shooting, right? You run out of ammo?
Yes.
Do you see a visual of that running
There's
out?
an ammo counter on the screen,
Yeah.
but once you shoot and you're out of ammo, we don't have a visual for that.
Just nothing will come out. The main visual is that your ammo equals 0. So yeah.
Might be good to have a visual in there that says yes, you can do this, because otherwise you're just spinning your wheels a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, the three components we talked about, I think, are great, and it seems to be very coherent. The product is very coherent in those, and it goes a long way. I think the sound, matching up the behavior, and having some real physical modeling going on and things like that. It just affects the feel of it. So it sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else? If not, we will conclude our presentation. And again, thank you so much.